The first autopsy said that he drowned in 2 inches of water. He had a couple contusions, but they didn't x-ray him. I think they were very quick to say that Tyler drowned. Mitch was like, I'll be honest with you, this is probably just a bad thing happened to a really good person, a bad accident. But when he saw what I had, when he saw the photos I had, he was like, something's wrong here.
It's a Friday night in Galesburg, Illinois, just 200 miles west of Chicago. Tyler Smith, fresh off his 23rd birthday celebrations, is out with friends, hopping from bar to bar. It's an exciting time in his life. He's gearing up for a huge move to San Jose, California, where he'll start his dream job as a police officer. But before he can head out to the West Coast, he has one last thing to do. Tyler, who's been serving in the National Guard for nearly 5 years, is supposed to attend a final drill in Macomb, about 170 miles away. He's supposed to report to the National Guard Armory early the next morning, but by 7:30 a.m., Tyler doesn't show up. His friends, the same ones he spent the night with, have no clue where he's gone. On September 14, 2018, Sandra Halsne says goodbye to her son, 23-year-old Tyler Smith, as he leaves for a National Guard drill in Macomb, Illinois. It's a 2-hour drive from their home in Rochelle. The drill starts early the next day, so Tyler plans to spend the night at his friend Evan's house in Galesburg, a town much closer to Macomb. He leaves around 4:30 p.m., excited to see his friends one last time before heading off to start his new life. Little does she know, this will be the last time she'll see her son alive.
I just said, make sure you call me when you make it. And he called me and he called his dad and he just said, we're headed out to go get something to eat. And then that was the last time I got to talk to him. On Saturday, the 15th, I got a text message from this person Tyler was supposed to stay with. And he just said, can you call me at this number right away? So I called it and he just said, have you heard from Tyler? And I'm like, no, isn't he at drill? I'm like, I texted him a couple times. He never read the text. It got delivered, but I figured he was at drill and busy. He would not miss this drill. He was very disciplined when it came to doing what he was supposed to be doing. But the sergeants tried to get a hold of him. He's not responding. I said, well, that makes me concerned because that's not Tyler. We're in a panic.
Sandra and Keith's father immediately hit the road for Galesburg, frantically calling Tyler's friends to see if anyone's heard from him. They get in touch with Evan, the friend Tyler had stayed with. Evan explains that he and Tyler went out drinking the night before, but he'd gotten so drunk that he couldn't remember how or where he'd ended up separated from Tyler. When he woke up, it was obvious that Tyler hadn't made it back to the house. His car was still in the driveway, and his bag was untouched. Evan, realizing something was terribly wrong, called the Galesburg Police Department around 11 a.m. Later that night, around 7 p.m., Sandra and Keith arrive in Galesburg and rush straight to the police station, hoping against hope that Tyler will be found safe and sound.
I walked in and I went straight to the desk and I said, I need to speak to an officer. They said, well, just have a seat and we'll get an officer out here to talk to you as soon as we can. They're busy. And I just said, okay. And so I couldn't even sit. I was just pacing, standing, pacing. And then a pizza delivery man walked in and he asked how our night was. And I'm just like, not good. And he just says, oh, I'm so sorry. He goes, I hope it's not related to the body they just found in Cedar Fork Creek. And I lost it. I then knew. I just knew it. My heart sunk. I dropped to the floor. I was hysterical. And then that's when they came out and they got us and they put us back in a room. And we had to wait several hours. They'd asked if Tyler had any tattoos. They asked if he had any birthmarks or any scars. And come to find out why there were no police is because they were all at the scene. My son was being found basically about the time we came into Galesburg.
Just a few blocks from the police station, Tyler's body is discovered face down at the bottom of Cedar Creek, a drainage canal that runs through the town. It's every parent's nightmare come true.
We were very close. We had a huge bond, and he was my best friend. I was very proud of him. Tyler was mixed race, half black, half white. He was good looking, handsome, muscular, loved sports, and he loved to laugh. And he had friends of all walks of life, and he always tried to help when he could. Tyler always wanted to be in the military. He said he wanted to be an Army guy, and he also wanted to be a police officer. When he first told me he was going to join the military, I was like, you do realize you're my only child? And he just smiled and just said, oh, Mom, it'll be fine, you know. And as he went through school, he continued to push that way. And he even went to college and got a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a minor in Homeland Security. He was also in the Army National Guard. That was just what he wanted to do, and he was going to make it happen. He had huge, huge dreams.
Tyler had graduated from Western Illinois University just a few months before his death in May 2018. He had already started taking steps toward his dream of becoming a police officer, and it seemed like he was on track to achieve everything he'd worked for.
He researched all the areas and different police stations, and he came up with San Jose, California. He was one out of 5,000 applicants, and they only took 50, and he was hired. And he told me, he's like, I'm going to be the top one. I work hard. This is what I want. Everything was completed, and he had worked so hard to get where he was at.
After hearing the devastating news of their son's death, Sandra and Keith are crushed. But they can't let go of the overwhelming need for answers. How did Tyler end up in that creek? Law enforcement tells them that Tyler drowned in the shallow water of the drainage ditch after drinking too much. They suggest that his death was an accident. He was simply too intoxicated, stumbled, and passed out in the water. Sandra is heartbroken, but she tries to accept the theory for the sake of closure as they prepare for Tyler's funeral.
After they told me it was him out there, I said, well, I want to see him. And they said, no, you can't see him. And they just said his whole body's evidence. It's zip tied, and the coroner's going to be taking him to a forensic pathologist. I was not getting any details. They sent in 3 or 4 patrolmen, and they gave me his wallet, and they just said, are you guys okay to drive? And I'm just like, so now what? Who do I follow up with here? Because something's wrong. And they just gave me 2 business cards and said, call him tomorrow. One was the detective on Tyler's case, and one was the coroner.
When the autopsy results finally come in, they confirm what the authorities had suspected. Tyler was drunk when he died, with a blood alcohol level of 0.246, more than 3 times the legal limit. The official theory is that Tyler had been drinking with friends, lost his way, and then passed out in the creek, ultimately drowning. To Sandra, though, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't match the responsible, cautious young man she knew. Still, with no other answers, she has no choice but to accept the story and bury her son.
I never got to see Tyler until he was embalmed and in his casket. When I got to see him the very first time, his cheek looked like it was 4 times the size it should be. And he had scratches all over his face. He had scratches all over his hands. And what I could see, he had injuries.
Seeing the condition of Tyler's body, Sandra begins to doubt the accident explanation. His injuries seem more severe than she expected, and they don't add up with the theory of a simple drunk drowning. She decides to request the autopsy photos, hoping they might shed more light on the truth.
After I saw photos, I'm like, he's got injuries on both sides of his head. He had several injuries that weren't mentioned on his autopsy. Like, what's going on here? And they're just like, oh, that's just from decomposition, blah, blah, blah. I said, no, that's not decomp. Those are injuries. Come to find out, nobody went to his autopsy. The detective didn't go, the coroner didn't go, and the pathologist was told he was found in a creek. And I'm assuming just thought he drowned. So she did like a 30-minute autopsy on him. They didn't x-ray him. They didn't take samples from under his nails. She didn't even test the water to see if it came from where he was found. His clothes got thrown away because no detective came to his autopsy to get that as evidence. It's just like they completely just said he drowned. That's it. Move on with your life and, sorry.
But Sandra can't let it go. There are too many unanswered questions gnawing at her, and she knows she can't sit back and wait for answers anymore. So, with a mother's determination, she steps into the role of investigator, vowing to find out what really happened to her son.
So I went to the police station and said, can we get a warrant for his phone records, his phone location records, because I can't get them. They have to come from the police or a judge from a warrant. And they're like, no. And I said, why not? They're only good for a year. His location history could even give us more of a better timeline. The police, they were not interested. They were bound and determined that this was just he drowned and that was it. They weren't going to do anymore. At that point, I was like, I want to FOIA everything you have. I want pictures. I want scene pictures. I want everything.
Using the Freedom of Information Act, Sandra digs through police files, phone records, and bank statements. Piece by piece, she starts to retrace Tyler's steps on the night of September 14th. It all begins when Tyler arrives in Galesburg around 6 p.m. Shortly after getting into town, he heads out with Evan and Evan's cousin, Robbie. They're ready for a night out, but no one could have predicted how it would end.
They were at Buffalo Wild Wings around 7 o'clock eating. I know that's to be true because I know the contents in his stomach from his autopsy was Buffalo Wild Wings. I know that they met at a bar because his cousin said they met there first.
At around 10:30 p.m., they leave a bar, and just a few minutes later, at 10:42 p.m., they stop at a Wells Fargo ATM. Tyler withdraws $100 from his account. But when Tyler's body is later found, he only has $70 in his wallet. So where did the rest of the money go? Could it be that Tyler was robbed after leaving the ATM? Was an altercation involved that somehow led to his death?
He called me and said, hey, Tyler's not on this video. And I said, he has to be. I have the timestamp. I have the correct account. I have the correct bank. I have everything. And he's like, come on back here. I'll prove it to you. I'll pop the disc in my computer. We'll look at it together. So we're sitting there in his office and he's like, I don't know what you guys want me to do. Your son drowned. And as soon as he said that, here comes Tyler and the two people who he was with that night.
Surveillance footage confirms Tyler was still with Evan and Robbie at the ATM at 10:42 p.m., and there's no sign of any conflict. Around 11 p.m., Evan and Robbie remember being kicked out of a bar for being too drunk. Robbie says he gave Tyler the keys to Evan's car at that point, just to make sure Evan wouldn't try to drive home intoxicated. Those very keys were later found on Tyler's body.
So according to Robbie, they all walked back to their vehicles. And Robbie said that he remembers he left Tyler and Evan as they were walking to Evan's car. But Evan doesn't remember any of that. And so did Evan leave him? Did they get separated at that point? Did they split up because he was drunk and he wanted to drive? How they got separated, I'm not sure if we'll ever know. Tyler was lost. He was walking in the complete wrong direction that he should have been. Tyler did not know Galesburg at all. He'd never been there before. He didn't know where he was at, and he was intoxicated.
Phone records reveal something strange. At about 11:30 p.m., Tyler texts a friend in Macomb asking for his address, seemingly forgetting that Macomb is nearly an hour away from Galesburg. The friend replies with the address at 11:38 p.m., and Tyler responds at 11:40 saying he's on his way. Then at 11:50 p.m., Tyler sends a few random Snapchats that appear to be sent by mistake. At 11:54 p.m., his friends try to call him back, but Tyler doesn't answer.
There was no activity after that until 5:30 a.m. when Evan woke up and he went with his mom to his car looking for Tyler, thinking maybe he was just sleeping in the car because Tyler had his keys. Evan called Tyler at 5:38 a.m., 5:45 a.m. Tyler never responded. Evan texted Tyler at 6:21 a.m. Tyler did not read the text, and then Evan reports him missing. At 11:31, police leave a message on Tyler's phone. He doesn't respond. And at 6:57 p.m. on Saturday the 15th, a 911 call was placed saying they found a body in a creek.
For 7 long months after Tyler's death, Sandra combs through everything she can find. She's desperate for answers, but soon realizes she needs an expert's help. Through a friend, she finds Mitch Drake, a retired homicide detective from East Hazel Crest, Illinois.
I had a really big preconceived notion that it was going to be a bad thing sometimes happen to good people, and the parents probably not accepting that it was a accidental death. But we agreed to meet with the parents, and they had amassed just a incredible amount of information. They had complete crime scene photos. They had all the police reports. They had the complete autopsy photos, which I couldn't imagine a family having to look at that on their son. They laid it all out to us, but I was skeptical, and I spent probably the first month just verifying everything that they said was true. And I would say to Sandy and Keith's credit is they have never told me one thing that's even close to being untrue. And that's very unusual in my line of work. So after I looked over the case and verified it, I knew that from my experience that there really hadn't been any type of an investigation done at all on the death investigation. And I decided to look into it.
Mitch wastes no time and starts by interviewing Evan, the last person to see Tyler alive.
He absolutely says that he can't remember what happened. I have years of interview experience. I don't think he's being deceptive. I think it may be possible that he feels extremely guilty. I mean, he's got a tattoo of Tyler's name on his arm. I talked to Evan's mother, who said basically the same thing. I personally do not consider Evan a suspect in anything.
Next, Mitch takes a closer look at the autopsy report. He agrees with Sandra's suspicions. The autopsy was rushed, barely lasting 30 minutes, far shorter than any autopsy he's ever seen. But as Mitch digs into other parts of the investigation, he quickly realizes that the rush wasn't limited to just the autopsy.
The police department didn't follow any established protocols. They had not done any type of investigation as far as asking for a crime scene tech to come out to process the scene. They put down markers in the crime scene photos, but didn't take any measurements. They had non-police personnel, volunteer firemen come in and had them roll the body over to get the ID and articles from the clothing before any pictures were taken, and didn't log the people that were in and out of the crime scene. They did no canvass of the area for any potential witnesses. They made no attempt to contact businesses or anything to obtain video. There was no notes taken of the crime scene, no samples taken of the water or soil. It was just routine stuff that you do on every death investigation that was completely overlooked and not done.
As part of his investigation, Mitch heads to Galesburg to visit the Cedar Creek drainage ditch where Tyler's body was discovered. He wants to see the scene for himself and understand how the police concluded that Tyler's death was an accident.
The police department's theory was that he was drunk and he went in from an access point, probably about 250 yards further down, in which he would have had to have basically got down on his rear end and slid down to get down into it, and then walked back the opposite way from the downtown area, leaned up against the wall, and then fell forward into the water. And to me, that was just ludicrous.
When Mitch examines the scene, a few key details immediately raise red flags. For one, Tyler's hands were lying flat by his sides. This suggests he made no attempt to break his fall. Secondly, Tyler's shoes were still relatively clean, which doesn't add up considering how muddy the ditch was. It makes Mitch wonder, could Tyler have fallen from the top of the concrete wall into the creek instead of walking down into it?
I actually walked down into the drainage canal and been in and out of there numerous times. This concrete drainage canal has almost a sheer wall that goes up about 16 feet. And then there's a rail above that to prevent people from walking off of it that goes up probably another 3 feet. His feet, looking at the photographs, are probably within 1 inch to 3 inches from that wall. If someone jumps or just falls forward from that height, his feet aren't going to be a couple inches away from that wall. It did not seem likely at all that he jumped or went over there willingly. He most likely was unconscious or already dead when he was flipped over that railing. All indications to me was that he was on top and he probably was picked up and flipped over that railing in a somersault motion, which would put his feet where they were.
Standing there at the scene, Mitch can't shake the feeling that the police theory of drowning just doesn't fit. At the time of Tyler's death, the water in the ditch was barely a trickle, and Tyler's head wasn't even submerged in it.
At the time that he died, at the deepest point, it probably was 3 inches, and there was no water at all from his feet all the way up to basically his neck. His head was laying sideways, and the water did not even reach the level of his nostrils. And his clothes were dry all the way from the shoulders down. His cell phone, as a matter of fact, was in his front pocket, and that still functions. And of course, his body wasn't found for about 16, 17 hours after he probably went in, but there was no rain or anything to indicate that the level of the water would change significantly.
Tyler's cell phone turns out to be a crucial part of the puzzle. With full access to the phone, Mitch and Sandra dive into its data. They discover the phone's health app logged Tyler's steps throughout the night, providing new insights into his movements before his death.
If you do a little math, you can calculate a person's step distance and the frequency. So I took that iPhone and I examined it, and the last 476 feet, his strides were longer, they were quicker, and they were stutter steps compared to the 3,000 feet before that. So my conclusion on that was he was confronted by somebody and that he had either fought or ran or struggled with someone that last 476 feet until he got to the railing.
As Mitch continues to dig into the evidence, it becomes painfully clear that the police account of Tyler's death doesn't match the facts. This means there's a real chance that Tyler didn't die by accident, but that something far darker may have happened.
The most logical theory that I had was that he had gotten down to the area that dead ends by the railroad bed, went through that gate and cut somewhat at an angle across the railroad tracks and went over that railing, and that's where he came to rest. Now, everything else was a mystery. Why did he walk down that way? Why would he have went around a fence like that? My first glance was that this was very unusual, and even an intoxicated person would not choose that route to go unless he was forced. This young man, Tyler, was trained. He was an infantry in the Army. He had been trained in hand-to-hand combat. And when he was found, his phone was in his pocket. Well, the first thing that someone who is trained does, if he has something in his hands and he's confronted, he clears his hands. He either throws it or he shoves it in a pocket. So the fact that the phone was found in his pocket is telling to me.
Before Mitch took on the case, Sandra had already searched the area where Tyler's body was found, hoping to find something that might help. 2 blocks away from the scene, she learns that a local Casey's Market has a security camera aimed right at the road. Could the footage hold a crucial clue?
I went to a Casey's and said, hey, do you have any video or anything? He said, yeah, we keep 6 months. I said, would you be willing to give me video? And he said, yeah. And he downloaded it, put it on a flash drive for me. And I sat and watched 6 hours of video. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's Tyler. I saw Tyler walking past Casey's. He was walking alone. He was walking fine. He wasn't stumbling.
When the family started pressing this situation, the lead detective told them that they had checked for video in the area and they had talked to people about video and they've been all around there. And the family went back and found that, in fact, they hadn't. And just about a block further down was a business that had a camera. And the detective told him, oh, yeah, he checked there and the camera wasn't working. And when the family went there, the guy told him, he said, no one's ever been here to talk to me other than you, and my camera works fine. And the unfortunate part is that's about where I think he would have been confronted by some people. And that video was recorded over every 7 days. And even though the owner gave the video up voluntarily to be analyzed, there was nothing that could be recovered by that time. It had been recorded over too many times. I find that the Galesburg Police Department, when they lied to the family, was probably the most egregious thing that they did. It's something you never do. You don't ever tell a victim's family or a victim that you've done something that you didn't do.
Mitch and Sandra collect as much information as they possibly can, but eventually they hit a dead end. There's nowhere left to turn. That's when Mitch suggests something bold. They need to exhume Tyler's body and conduct a second autopsy. This could finally reveal if Tyler had been involved in an altercation before his death. The Illinois State Police agreed to step in and oversee the second autopsy. If the findings change the cause of death from an accident to homicide, it could open the door for a full-scale investigation.
The second autopsy revealed a lot more information than the first one did. And as far as the cause of death goes, I can't comment on that because it's up to the coroner to put down the cause of death. The reason that the results of the second autopsy, they're withholding information from it, is quite frankly the lack of physical evidence because of the evidence being destroyed or returned. If in fact they do make an arrest on this, there's certain things revealed in the autopsy that only the offender would know. So that's the reason you're keeping the information close to the chest.
After the second autopsy results come in, the Illinois State Police honor their commitment to launch a new investigation. This breakthrough is the result of almost 2 years of tireless work from Tyler's mother Sandra and Mitch Drake, the retired homicide detective who has been by her side through it all, maintaining close communication with the investigators.
This is the only case I've looked into since I've retired. I think this took a hold of me because of the family, their passion, their honesty, their straightforwardness. No one would help these people. The best possible outcome for me would be that someone is successfully prosecuted for this crime and held to account. The best possibility would be that they get peace from it. In my opinion, the greatest tragedy in this case is that the parents may get a lot of answers they were seeking, but if the best possible outcome of this occurs, I still feel that they are still going to feel empty because they've lost their son, who they both just absolutely adored. And I think that no matter what occurs, that's always going to be there.
Exhuming Tyler's body might have sparked the new investigation, but it came at an unbearable emotional toll on Sandra. She had to relive the darkest moment of her life, burying her son, and the process of reopening his grave brought all the pain rushing back.
He was exhumed and he was reburied all in one day. And that was the last thing I wanted to do. I did not want to have to do that. But we had no closure. He deserved justice. And Tyler was a good person, and whoever did this to him, I felt needed to be held accountable. And I was not going to stop. I'm not stopping until I find out. I don't care if I have to do this till the day I die. I will never give up. And I just hope and pray that somebody will finally come forward and do the right thing and just give our family some peace. You know, give this kid that served our country some justice.